Okay. I'm going to start with this paragraph because it just makes me laugh. Marek and Bakura are in the shower together, and Marek is singing to himself while the water is going into his mouth. So it sounds like this. This is how I wrote it. Me and Bakura will have Marek blurted, his knee brushing against Bakura's inner thigh. Bakura's entire body grew tense with pleasure, and he lost his footing for a moment, buttocks crashing down onto the temperature valve as he flailed his arms to find purchase. He grabbed, I'm so sorry by the way, he grabbed frantically at the shower curtain and dragged it to one side, pulling himself up only to find that his ass had managed to turn the dial all the way into the blue. It wasn't so much the temperature that told him this, considering his proximity to Marek's naked body. It felt as though he were on fire, regardless of the freezing water that now pummeled his back. But the pout on Marek's face as he scrambled to eye level. Bakura, your bottom made the water cold. Oh, Bakura mumbled without taking his eyes off Marek, for they were literally nose to nose, and he was too busy enjoying their lack of personal space to worry about coordination. He reached back and gave the valve a twist. Immediately, the water went from ice cold to blazing hot, causing Marek to flinch and back away all of 1 inch. Bakura moved into him, taking the brunt of the hot water. It's all right. You get used to it after a while. Yeah, what about you? Marek asked as Bakura took the shampoo bottle from his hand and popped the cap open with a flick of his thumb. He poured clear gel into his palm and brought his hands together, rubbing them in circles and all the while staring into Marek's curious violets. Aren't you hot? Doesn't it bother you? I'm always hot and bothered around you. Bakura replied, running his hands through Marek's blonde locks and lathering him with shampoo. He watched as the foam, the same milky color as his skin, dripped from Marek's scalp and onto his brow. Wiping it from his face, Bakura moved his arms around Marek's back and guided himself forward, holding their bodies together as he continued to wash the boy's hair. He felt no resistance as he placed his lips to Marek's ear and whispered, "Now you have to do me." What? It loses something when you hear, what? The back of Marek's head hit the clear shower screen with a dull crack. It didn't seem to faze him. It's only fair that you wash my hair too, Bakura grinned. He pulled Marek back into the shower's path, rinsing his hair for him as Marek closed his eyes and allowed him to go to work. Then, with Marek's eyes still closed, Bakura reached down and grazed his fingers against the small of his back, curling them around his thighs and ever so softly squeezing the skin around his buttocks. He felt himself grow hard against Marek's leg, and he pursed his lips provocatively. Do you feel that? Feel what? You all still with this? Asked Marek, opening one eye. Oh, the clean feeling that comes with a fresh shower, I totally do. It's like that one commercial with the attractive lady in the shower and she's all, yes, yes. You know, I never did get that one. Bakura sighed. Any other bi-curious teenager would have been thrusting and grinding at his backside by now, but Marek was still more interested in the minutiae of classic television commercials. He decided to make things rather less subtle and dropped the shampoo bottle to the floor of the cubicle. Whoops, butterfingers, let me get that. He was about to turn around and jam his ass into Marek's waiting crotch, hoping that the position alone would be enough to get the muddled hormones to reach Marek's brain, or at least his cock. In fact, preferably just his cock. Were Marek to actually think about this situation, he might realize that they both already showered once today and would immediately start toweling himself off. Bakura ran his tongue across his teeth and began to pivot when Marek suddenly lunged down. It's okay, I got it! Marek announced, and Bakura felt his cheek brush against the side of his now raging boner. And for an instant, Marek's face was buried in between Bakura's legs, damp hair tickling at his balls. He felt his skin prickle with excitement. I like the nervous laughter, by the way. Like, whenever Marek speaks, you're like, ah, that's funny, and then I'm like, they're gonna fuck, and you're like, oh. They are. tickling at his balls. He felt his skin prickle with excitement and his voice catch in his throat as the all-too brief moment of contact passed, and Marek was back up with the plastic bottle in hand.
Are you okay, Bakora? Your nose is bleeding.
It's just the heat, he lied, wiping the blood onto his knuckles and watching it just... Do you want me to skip to the fucking? No, this is fine. Do you want me to stop reading? Okay.
No!
Hands up, people want me to keep going. Fuck. He couldn't take much more of this. If Marek had been even remotely aware of how badly he was cock-teasing him, Bakura would have dropped the act and gotten down to the real foreplay. But it was impossible to know if Marek was truly as oblivious as he seemed, if he was actually the airhead he portrayed himself to be. Because if he wasn't, and this whole thing was an elaborate act, then he was perhaps the greatest evil genius that Bakura had ever met.
Don't get
any in my eyes.
Turn around then.
Marek ordered.
Your hair's all in back anyway, you big old cream puff.
Bakura did as he was told, placing his hands against the wall and tossing his head back, spreading his legs. It wasn't quite the erotic display he'd been planning, but it was close enough. He turned and gave Marek a coy smirk and arched his shoulders. Be gentle with me. Ow! Catching him in mid-sentence, Marek was now tugging violently at Bakura's hair, shampooing every spike and bang with unnecessary vigor. Welcome, by the way. Bakura winced, but took it all the same. This went on for a few minutes before Marek reached around him and pulled his head into the water spray. Bakura still poised against the wall with his arms outstretched, hair flung back until it became a white, soggy teardrop shape. Finally, Marek was done. Bakura was about to turn around and thank Marek through gritted teeth when he saw Marek replacing the shampoo onto the shower caddy and retrieving a small orange sponge in its stead.
Hold still, Bakura.
Marek insisted, beginning to sponge Bakura's back for him.
When I'm done, you're gonna feel so pampered.
Whoopee. Bakura tilted his head and tried to appreciate the rough sensation of the sponge as it licked at his back with all the tenderness of a steamroller. Aren't I good at writing fucking porn? I'm just saying, they haven't even started doing anything yet. Anything. As he did, he found his erection rapidly losing its staying power, and so he reached down and tried his best to encourage his member to stand its ground. Oh boy, here we go. Fingering it, jerking it, muttering curse words, and picturing Marek in any number of positions, it wasn't enough to put the obnoxious scraping sensation to the back of his mind. It was like water torture. Each time Marek hit him with the sponge... I'm sorry, by the way. It was just enough to make him lose his grip on whatever once made this situation seem so appealing. He shook his head and focused once more on tugging at his cock, wanting to turn around and surprise Marek with just how much he wanted him. Throw his arms around him and let their junk get to know each other. Then he'd bite at his neck and give his ass a good squeeze, and then he'd start jerking Marek off and watch his face as it went from that vacuous, befuddled look to one of ecstasy, and after he climaxed, he would take him into the other room and the sponge clawed at his back and he let out a disappointed cry. Ugh!
What's wrong, Bakura?
Marek asked, the same dopey voice, no allure, no arousal.
Is it your shoulder?
It's nothing, Bakura replied, keeping his face hidden. Keep going, I'm really enjoying this.
You sure?
Said Marek, the sponge hesitating against his spine.
I could always help you, you know.
Help me with what? Bakura half turned to look over his shoulder, but then froze in place when he felt Marek's hand reach around his waist and grasp the shaft of his cock beneath where his own hand had gripped. Yes! There wasn't even a moment's hesitation before Marek was stroking it, pumping at the shaft, and tracing along the inside of Bakura's thigh with his index finger as he did so. God, I'm seeing lots of very uncomfortable glances. I can call it there. It's been going for a...
No!
Okay, hands up if you want me to call it there. Nobody! Literally nobody! I'm gonna read until the first person orgasms and then we're stopping. Fuck, guys. I was expecting at least one of you to have some shame. That's true. Bakura quivered, the fingers on his free hand curling down as he felt the borders between fantasy and reality retreating into a thin, indivisible line. God, I'm pretentious. Bakura bit his lip, fastened his eyes tightly shut, and then opened them, expecting to wake up and realize that none of this was actually happening. Then he looked down and saw that Marek had pushed his hand away and was now coaxing the tip of his palm the tip of his cock. Okay. The tip into the palm of his own hand, wrist nuzzling the underside as he stroked the length of his now fully erect penis. "Whoa, what are you?" Before he could finish, he felt a finger begin to sneak. Oh. You're gonna learn something about me today. He felt a finger begin to sneak into his asshole and he panicked. Not from fear, but from sheer surprise. He pulled away. These are Yu-Gi-Oh characters, by the way. He pulled away. It wouldn't be Yu-Gi-Oh if this didn't take hours to finish. He pulled away and span up. Some of you probably came like with friends because you were dragged here because you had no interest in this whatsoever. And you've either... There you go. Sorry. I do apologize. I really genuinely do. Where were we? His fingers in his asshole. He pulled away and span around, half expecting to be confronted with someone completely different. Perhaps even a reappearance from Melvin was the cause of all this perversion. But no, it was Marek. Same old Marek, with hands probing at his crotch. "Marek, what's wrong?" Marek smiled. It wasn't the usual dumb smile either. This smile had a secret, and Bakura had a feeling it was a dirty one.
You look like you were struggling, Bakura. When I'm touching myself, I usually use both my hands like this, you see?
Marek demonstrated. Bakura moaned, loud and incoherent.
It's much more effective.
Bye.
There you go.
We got our first one!
Yeah!
Marek, Bakura said again. It's nearly over, by the way. Marek, Bakura said again, reaching down to stop what was transpiring. Not because he didn't want it, but because he knew he would finish at any moment and didn't want to do so with this cloud of confusion hanging over his head. "I just want to be clear on this. You do know you're touching my dick right now, don't you?"
Duh.
Marek's nose wrinkled attractively. "But I thought you weren't. I mean, I thought you thought you weren't." Bakura struggled. "I mean, when did you figure out that you're..."
Bakura.
Marek smirked.
I figured it out about the same time you figured out you loved me.
Aww. No R for this. Bakura's heart rose, then sank, then rose again, like a bright red buoy on an uncertain tide. I'm fucking pretentious as fuck.
Good writing.
Thank you. "You heard that? Why didn't you tell me?"
And missed the look on your crotch?
I surprised myself. Marek cackled.
It was much more fun to play dumb. A villain always has to have that's not the correct grammar. A villain always should have a trick or two up his sleeve.
"You're the worst villain I've ever met," Bakura spat, doing his utmost to mask his joy. It didn't work. The smile kept tickling the corners of his mouth as he glared, and the pink rush of color across his cheeks didn't help matters.
I take that as a compliment.
Marek preened, dipping to his knees and bringing Bakura's cock to his mouth, where it twitched impatiently. "Do you really want me to keep going with this?"
It's almost over. Just let it happen.
I'm just saying, from this point on, there's no coming back from this. You're gonna come. I'm just saying that when you next see me after this panel, we're gonna have like Vietnam flashbacks. We're gonna have that 1,000-yard stare where we don't know how to explain what we've experienced to each other, but we both know. We both know. Here we go. There's only about where it twitched impatiently. He wet his dark lips and guided it inside, welcoming it with the impressive length of his tongue, licking the underside of his helmet from side to side. Yes. This is really embarrassing for him. Fictional cartoon characters are fucking, it's okay. Bacora's nerves, having only just set themselves at ease, were once again lit up like floodlights on a football pitch as he felt Maric's tongue at work, neck pumping back and forth as he sucked hungrily and without pause. You guys, this isn't entertaining. We're gonna get through 4 more paragraphs and then I'm calling it. Wherever we're at, I'm calling it in 4 paragraphs. I feel so bad, there's this guy and he's squirming every time I say anything regarding cock. And I just feel for him so much. I feel so bad that I'm subjecting you guys to this. Bacora's knees were jelly as he struggled to remain upright. This whole scenario had thrown him for a loop. He was supposed to be the one to seduce Marek, not the other way around. But of course, Marek had been doing it the whole time, hadn't he? Drawing him in with that pretty, carefree attitude and that flawless body and the promise of something he wanted but could never have. And now he was giving him that forbidden treasure. It seemed too good to be true, but it was very true and very good. He moaned once more and laughed, a weird and nervous sound. A sound of someone who doesn't quite know where they are or who they're with. Marek was slowing down, his lips wrapped tightly around the tip of his member as he slurped and lapped at it with his expert tongue. Bacora nodded to nobody in particular, his knees giving way, and yet again he found himself having to embrace the shower curtain to prevent himself from collapsing. He pulled it close, buried his face in the stiff plastic sheet, and enjoyed. He'd waited so long for this, for shower curtains and awkward noises and tongues and blowjobs in shitty motels, and feeling and knowing and water running down his face. Had he cried today? Did that really happen? There was a story before this. Was it even possible that he was even sad on a day like this? Maybe this wasn't the same day. Maybe this was another day. Maybe it was tomorrow already and he'd missed the last 12 hours, 12 days, years. This was good. This was better than good. This was Marek bit down on his shaft. You guys had the same visceral reaction. It was amazing. Not so much with the teeth, Marek. Marek shrugged and continued sucking. There's about to be an orgasm. We're almost in the clear. Bacora turned his face to the shower head, lifting his arms up and adjusting the spray so it caught him across the chest and rolled down his pale stomach. Sorry. I'm very sorry. Oh, right. He watched dizzily as Marek's tongue attacked him, the tattoo on his back barely visible through the water cascading down their bodies. In his mind, they were somewhere else, somewhere luxurious, the Pharaoh's palace. Bacora was seated on the throne, dressed in the murdered king's garb, and Marek, his servant, was kneeling before him, sucking off the man who did what nobody else could, destroy the Pharaoh, take the Millennium items, and the whole of Egypt had no choice but to bow to him as he held aloft the Pharaoh's bloody corpse and tossed it into a burning pyre. And Marek was there, and they held each other and laughed and fucked in the Pharaoh's bed and fucked in his throne room, and on the throne, everywhere they fucked. Bacora heard Marek reacting to his climax before he even knew it had happened. The whole blowjob, teeth aside, had felt like the most incredible orgasm he'd ever experienced. It was only when Marek gulped and made exaggerated spluttering sounds that he knew he'd finished. Then he noticed he was breathing heavily to the point that he'd exhausted himself simply from doing so. He fell back, letting go of the curtain and dropping to his ass in the corner of the shower. Everything tingled. His feet, his face, his heart, his cock. It wasn't something he was too familiar with, feeling this good about everything. He looked over at Marek, who was wrestling with the showerhead, trying to spray into his mouth and rid himself of the aftertaste. Bacora chuckled cruelly. Not that he wanted Marek to swallow, per se. He would have said something if he'd known it was going to happen so soon. It just looked so cute. That's it!